Welcome back to Voices in Health and Wellness. This is the show where we connect with leaders and innovators transforming care from the inside out. I'm Dr. Andrew Greenland, and today's episode is a deeply personal and inspiring one. I'm joined by Ros Jabar, also known as Dr. Ros, a former pharmacist who's taken an incredible journey from conventional medicine to building her own lifestyle-driven wellness program. After facing her own health challenges, Ros made a brave and radical shift, leaving behind the traditional path and to develop something truly unique. So with that, Ros, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Gosh, you've made me sound really cool.
Well, good. As long as I've got it all accurate, that's the most important thing. I don't want to kind of misrepresent you in my introduction.
Well, I don't know. She sounds really cool. I'd like to be that person. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You don't realize that you've taken that journey until somebody spells it out like that. But yeah, thank you for putting it that way. It's great.
No worries. So speaking of the journey, could you perhaps talk us through your journey from pharmacy to emergency care to building Rosmedics? Because it's an interesting trajectory. Very interested to hear about it.
Well, it's an odd one because it just happened naturally, organically, I would say. So I was a pharmacist. I studied pharmacy. I absolutely loved pharmacy. It worked well with my love for chemistry, physiology, pharmacology, the lot. So it was really something I enjoyed, to the point where I had my own pharmacy in a lovely little village called Penturch. And I found that I was slightly more than, when I say more than a pharmacist, all of us pharmacists were pretty involved with our patients anyway. But I was always finding a pattern and always finding that maybe what I was doing or giving them that medication wasn't really enough. So I was always sending them back with little post-it notes. When you go to see your doctor, ask him to check this or ask him to check that. And then one day, this very handsome doctor walked in and I said, I'd like to speak to the pharmacist. And I could tell I thought, oh gosh, I've either really irritated him or he just needs a bit of advice. And I was hoping it was the little bit of advice. And he said, are you the pharmacist that's been here for such and such time? I said, yes. He said, did you see a patient of mine the other day? And I said, yes. And I was really expecting a telling off. And he just said, you're wasted. He said, you need to go to medical school and you need to put those skills to the test. And of course, I was a new mum. I had 2 little children then. I was running a pharmacy for somebody else. And how was I going to leave pharmacy and go into medical school at my age? And I was 30 at the time. I thought, okay, how do I do this? I didn't feel confident. So I redid my A-levels, 4 of them, I might add, in a year, in the evenings. And I got the required A-levels because I just thought it was best to see if I could actually hack that whole medical thing. And I got rejected everywhere. None of the medical schools wanted to know. And I can't tell you why, but they didn't want to know because there's so much competition to become a doctor. I mean, you really do need to be like the best of the best. If you're going to go into medical school, you've got to really show you want to get into medical school. So anyway, I was discussing my sad story with another pharmacist who said, oh my goodness, you need to meet this woman, Professor Ruth Davis, who is an advocate for women like you. And she met me, she had a conversation with me, and she penned a reference for me to the medical school. And from a rejection, I had a phone call from University Hospital or Cardiff University saying, could you come in for an interview? And the funny thing was, before that, I was trying to show I was, really interested in medicine, and I was going to do all these pre-medical training things. And I went there, and I'll never forget, there was an ENT surgeon there who was basically gave us these pigs' heads to cut and sew up. And he said, oh, you'll never get into medicine. Don't be silly. He said, you're the wrong sex, you're the wrong age. You've got children. Basically, there was a lot against me. But, you know, I was a 30-something-year-old woman. He could speak to me like that. There wasn't a problem. And he said, I just know you won't. And he said, if you ever do, he said, let me know and I'll eat my hat. And lo and behold, I went for the interview and he was interviewing. And I kid you not, no word of a lie. He looked at me and he said, I am completely aware of your journey. And he was. He said, I have absolutely no questions whatsoever, apart from one. And so I was ready for him. And by the way, I was prickly when I saw him. I was like, oh, come on then. I'm ready for this fight. And he said, I just want to know why. And I said, the journey is, it's a natural progression from pharmacy for me. And it sufficed. There's two interviewers and there was a younger student interviewing me. And she said, well, how are you going to feel your age? Bear in mind, I was 30-something. So as far as I know, I'm in my 50s now. So 30-something's young. She said, how would you feel being around teenagers who were coming into medical school and this, that, and the other? And I didn't consider myself old at all. And I said, look, I think they'll learn from me and I'll just get inspired by them. And, well, there wasn't much to say. And that was done in April. And I was in medical school in September. And my husband walked out on me the second I went into medical school. I had two little ones. And you are then left with, how on earth do I do this? Do I give up medicine? And something that I actually realized it was something I've always wanted to do. Or what? And I thought, no, I'm not going to give it up. So you're going to love this. There was a little park keeper's hut in a park outside the university, the museum in a park, beautiful. And I opened a coffee shop. Yeah, I opened a coffee shop to pay for the fees because I had to pay. I was a postgrad, so I had to pay for my fees. And it was great. I used to go there and I got somebody in to do the coffees and I did my own coffees and I did my own bits and pieces. So that paid for it. And then as time went on, I knew the coffee shop was, it was seasonal. That wasn't going to help me. I applied to the pharmaceutical part of the NHS to get a contract to open a pharmacy in a very small village because I couldn't buy a pharmacy. I mean, you know, divorced little old Ros medical student could not buy a pharmacy, but I could surely run one at the weekends and this, that, and the other. And I got the contract, much to the disgust of the local GPs. I got the contract and I opened up a pharmacy, and that sustained me and my little family through my medical school. So that was my story into getting into medical school, and I loved every single moment of medical school. I felt completely at home. I felt completely honoured about being in this profession, to be able to do that and have that responsibility for human life. And so, yeah, it was the start of a wonderful journey.
Wow. Can I just say that's such a remarkable journey of resilience and persistence and resourcefulness. And one little comment I want to make, I hope that ENT surgeon had a very crunchy hat.
Well, I asked him, I said, would you like salt or pepper, or would you like both? And he's still around. He sees me, he nods at me occasionally. And it was the funniest thing in the world. I won't name him, but I can afterwards if you like. But yeah, I won't name him.
Okay, of course.
But yeah, it's good.
And then from there to, carry on the journey. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, well, do you know, when you're in medical school, you think, yeah, I'm going to be a cardiologist. Yeah, I'm going to be a surgeon. You know, I was one of these, I was like, honestly, we call it like, I was a baby on pop. You can honestly fill me with tartrazine and I was bouncing. And I was like that with every subject. If I went into cardiology, I wanted to be a cardiologist. If I went into respiratory, I wanted to be a respiratory surgery. Honestly, I could not tell you how interested I was in medicine. It was absolutely, it blew my mind every time. I just wanted to do everything, but I obviously didn't have the capacity. But I settled on becoming an A&E doctor because it was that exciting thing. It was that for me, it was the drama, but it was also that methodical thinking. What's going on with this person? He or she can't tell me what's going on. What's going on? Let me look at the numbers. Let me look at the situation and all of that. And I settled on that. And bear in mind now, I hit my 40s. So I haven't got the resilience that a 20-something would have. And I'm doing the very long hours as an F1 and F2. And I've got 2 children at home, older children. My son would have been 17 and he had severe autism. So for him, it was really difficult to see his mum come in and out of the house at odd times of the day and the night. So it didn't work with him. Balancing that was really difficult. And I knew I went into a profession then that I thought, this isn't going to be family friendly. It isn't going to help him. And, with autism, especially with teenagers, they've got the brain changes that are happening. He was getting some really retractable behaviours. So I had to change tact. And I went, and this is purely, it's not what I planned. Not much of this is planned. In fact, most of my life isn't planned, in all honesty. But I just thought, right, well, I went to see the director and I said, look, this is my situation. And they couldn't help, unfortunately. They said, yeah, we can do less than full-time training for you, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, they couldn't give me the hours that I needed. And when I needed hours, it didn't need to be family-friendly hours. They just needed to be rigid hours so that I went to work at one time and came home at one time. And those times were fixed. And that couldn't happen. So, you're left with, well, okay, how do I pay the bills? And how do I continue to work in a profession until this difficulty has passed? That my son has managed to get over some of his behaviours. And basically, my partner at the time turned around and he said, well, why don't you do that thing? And I said, what thing is that? He goes, the thing. And he was pointing to his forehead and he was doing this. And I goes, what? He said, where they can't move, they paralyse their face. Oh, and you mean Botox? He said, yeah, well, honestly, the look I gave him, I think could have melted a wax version of him. And he said, no. He said, do you know how much money they charge for it? And of course, I thought, right, money, ping, I need to pay the bills. Let's have a look. And I did, honestly, it was a day course and it was taught by a nurse on basically botulinum toxin injections. And this was 15 years ago now. And I was utterly disgusted by the end of the course. And I tell you why I was disgusted. I asked her, I said, would you let me inject you now? And she said, no. I said, so if you don't want me to inject you, you're not confident that what you've just produced is safe to go out to the general public. And that got my typical clinical head going. And I started looking at doing things properly. So I started my little clinic and I started dealing with people who were having botched jobs and who were having problems. And that's how Rosmedics come into being. It was an aesthetic clinic, started in the front room of my house, just to help pay the bills, but do it in the right way. I still locumed where I could, and I still locumed in A&E, and I absolutely loved it. Locumed with the medical assessment unit, and I did the odd endocrine because my interest fell into those subjects. And it got bigger and bigger. But over the years in clinic, I noticed a pattern with my patients. People would come in and they know you're a doctor, and they've come because they know you're a medical doctor. I noticed a pattern. People weren't ill enough to go to their doctor, but they weren't well enough, or should I say thriving, to enjoy life. And that was the pattern I was getting. People were confident enough to come to see me. They wanted to see me. They felt comfortable enough to see me. And I mean, as I'm putting, and let's be frank, as I'm putting a neurotoxin into their face, they're telling me about how they're not sleeping, they're not eating very well, they're putting on weight, or their weight's coming off, and they're stressing at work. But there was a pattern. They just weren't enjoying life. They were just plodding along. And at the same time, I think I had my own health journey happening. I wanted to have children in my late 40s. I mean, as a medic, I knew that was going to be difficult. And I sort of agreed to have them because I thought, it won't happen anyway. But I knew that I had to give her a good chance. And to do that, I knew I had to be fit. I had to be healthy. I had to be a good weight. I had to have good cardiovascular health. So I was on my own journey at that moment in time as well. And when you're on your own journey, you share stories and you do your own research. So I managed to have these kids, 2 little ones. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I'm not afraid to say I'm 54. So I had one at 48 and I had one at 49. And so having children later in life, balancing work, balancing the onset of perimenopause and menopause, and a severely autistic adult now, traditional medicine wasn't working for me. I was having palpitations. I was putting on weight. I couldn't keep up. I had no stamina, no vitality, but I wasn't sick. I wasn't ill. I didn't have a pathology or a disease that I could put my finger on and say, I need to see a doctor. So I just went back to basics. Am I sleeping right? Am I eating right? Am I resting? Am I dealing with stressful situations? Because falling apart in a time when you're running a business, you've got 2 little ones, and you've got I wouldn't say I had a chaotic household, but, it's sort of that ordered chaos that a woman lives in. I needed to fix myself. And then as I was fixing myself, I was noting a pattern of what I was doing. And I think that's what doctors do, don't they? They notice patterns. It's part of our diagnostic reasoning. We look and we see patterns, and it's part of finding out disease pathology. We just look at patterns. And again, I was seeing patterns in what was working and how I felt better when I felt better. And I sort of created a framework for myself to follow. And I broke them down into 7 principles for myself. I call them 7 principles, but that's for me. It's just a framework. One, I needed to change my behaviors. Then I needed to eat and drink right. I needed to move a bit more. I needed to handle stress. I needed to just stop and enjoy life. And I was handing over this information to my clients who were walking in. I was telling them, intermittent fasting worked for me. Drinking constructed water is a lot more healthy. And no, I don't constantly drink. I only drink when I think I need to drink. And I only eat when I'm hungry. And that type of thing, just very, very basic advice. And it was great because these women were my age and they were following the advice, and it was really helping them. So I started writing about these principles. And if there's one thing that I've noticed on social media, because we're in the age of social media, aren't we, was that people don't like to read anymore, certainly not books. They want to be told, and they want that what they're being told to be evidence-based, people like me in particular. And they want to watch you, or they want to listen to you, or they want to see nice pictures. So I did this framework as a series of videos. It's like a video teaching, and it went down really well. And I called it WILL, Wellness and Health in Life. That's what it stands for, WILL, because I couldn't think of any other name. And it works really well. And I stick with it. And I brought my family up with it. And I mean, I call it WILL, but most people call it common sense. But I just feel in this day and age, just common sense is, unless it's in short form, you don't see common sense. And there's very few people talking about common sense, but they'll talk about WILL because it's interesting and it sounds interesting. So yeah, that was my journey to try and fix myself and how I started off as a pharmacist. So it sounds really interesting when you say it, but when you live it, it's like you just plod and it just organically happens.
Well, it's inspiring to listen to. It really is quite remarkable. I've been sitting there absorbing everything. Really, really fascinating.
Thank you.
Just maybe go into a little bit more detail on the programme, because I'm sure people at home will be interested in this. So you've got 7 principles in the programme. Obviously, you have to go through the whole thing in great detail. Can you just kind of give us the broad headings of what these 7 principles are? And obviously, we can put some more information on the bio page for anybody who wants to explore this further.
Yeah. Well, the broadly, I mean, let's go through them. So I said there's 7 principles. So the first is to actually look at your behaviors. So it's procrastination and habit forming. Helping people overcome that procrastination is difficult. And I think as doctors, I went to a school, not a great school in Cardiff, and but I believe I had some of the best teachers in Cardiff. And the one thing I will remember to this day, and it's stayed with me, is one of my chemistry teachers said, if you want to pass, if you want to get the results you want to get, you need to create a framework of learning. And you need to do this every single day. And he gave me something that's very similar to the Eisenhower matrix. Have you heard of the Eisenhower matrix? And it's basically prioritizing and giving tasks priority so that you can get them done. And he gave me that Eisenhower matrix, but he also said timetable everything. And that was one of the habits now that got me over procrastination. So I think that's really important, because I can sit here and I can have a million things to do, but I would prefer to doom scroll. I think everybody would. And I would prefer to have a cup of coffee. I would prefer to catch Coronation Street or whatever's on TV, rather than doing what I need to do, which is going to take me literally 2 minutes. But I would do everything other than that. So behaviors. So that's the first thing I wanted to tackle. Then I wanted to do something really, really simple, was basically the physiology of your body, the sleep, why we need sleep. Now, these 2 things I thought, great, they will work really quick. So there's the circadian rhythm, that's what I put it in as. And then and that encompasses sleep. Then there was breathing. There was also going out, so solar supplementation, I call it. Getting your infrared rays, getting your UV rays. Yes, I know UV has a bad rap, but we should have at least 10 to 15 minutes of it just to get our vitamin D levels up. And we all know how good vitamin D is for you. there's movement, that what you eat, the whole foods you eat. And I say quite clearly, if there's a packet of crisps that grows on a tree, eat the packet of crisps that's come off the tree. That's fine. But you're not going to find that, are you? You're going to find fruit and veg. So it's again, bringing people back to just those basic principles: hydration, sleeping, walking, sun, movement as opposed to severe exercise, nutrition, breathing for stress relief, and getting your habits into place. Simple things that we probably do every single day without thinking. But I think with today's technology, and don't get me wrong, I love technology. That technology is why you and I are talking today. And technology is something that I will use in a new clinic. But sometimes it impinges on our life and our physiology. And a very long way down the line, there'll be pathology associated with it. And that's what I try to get people to do. Just go back to who you are, go back to basics. And that's what Will does for people.
Lovely. What kind of pushback did you face when you started talking about lifestyle medicine with your colleagues?
Oh, dear. Well, okay. The thing is, it's not measurable, is it? Unless there's been a randomized, well, it is measurable. What am I saying? Of course it's measurable. Unless there's a worldwide randomized controlled trial that involves hundreds of thousands of people. I know I'm being overly dramatic now. They don't want to know. And today's medicine, I sort of don't even want to call it traditional medicine, because I think this is modern medicine we're talking about. Traditional medicine, you've got medicines that are thousands of years old that we don't even look at in society sometimes today. But this modern medicine that we have, unless you've got figures behind it, unless you've got a big, strong evidence base, people don't really want to know. And it's because of the way we're taught in medical school, pulling apart trials to show that there's that much of significance. I remember looking at these papers that I had to look at, and my maths and my physics is not the best. And I had to work out whether this was a significant data or not. And I just wanted to know, well, did it work? Did it actually work? So unless you've got figures and proof and authority wading in, they don't want to know. And unfortunately, I hate using that term, but it's almost quack-like and fringe medicine that you're labelled as. But funnily enough, when I was doing endocrine, most of my patients only wanted to come back and see me. And it was because on top of giving their hormones and making sure that their adenomas were controlled or things like that, I was also giving them lifestyle advice. I was giving them advice on sleep. I was giving them advice on nutrition, walking. And they were feeling those effects a lot better than the negative effects they were getting from having hormone replacements and medicalization. So I remember giving a very small teaching. Every Fridays we had a teaching session, and I wanted to talk about time-restricted eating and how it's really, really good for blood sugar. And of course, there's been lots and lots of these trials, but unfortunately, my colleagues didn't want to know, and unless, like I said, there's big data with it, it's not seen as part of this modern medicine. I want to point out that I'm not anti-medicine, I'm pro-health. I am a doctor at heart, and I know how important medicine is, in particular at crisis points when pathology the chronicity of illness had got to the point where that pathology is manifested, and you do need to have that medical intervention. I am very much pro-medicine, but I'm also pro-health. And that needs to be, I work within the confines of my abilities, put it that way.
And so I guess my follow-up question to that is, how did you know it was time to stop trying to convince the system and build your own path that you've created?
I think it was that very embarrassing moment when every single one of my colleagues, and I'm talking from professor to consultant, and these were my friends, professor to consultant to registrars to junior doctors, in one room, were so against what I was saying that I thought, well, if I can't convince you, and it's actually you're not, and this, they weren't important. What was important was the people that were coming to me and thriving and feeling better, because that's why I went into medicine. I went into medicine to help reduce suffering. I don't think you can only fix yourself, but we as doctors externally, our external input is that we can reduce suffering. And I thought, well, I'm going to do this with patients out there. But the other thing that was really powerful was it was social media. The social media input. There were people giving, my concern was the rise of unqualified health advice on social media. There was no clinical training, and people were promoting things like drinking castor oil for gut health or inflammation, for example. I mean, it's not helpful, it's harmful. And health isn't about hacks, it's about context, it's about dose, physiology, the individual. So, I needed to also be that sort of buff. And I kept saying that to the doctors. I said, unless we stand there and put a voice to what health should be and healthy practices should be, you've got people like these influencers with 500,000 people watching them and going and glugging castor oil, for goodness sake. So somebody has to start taking the leap forward. Now, for me, you just got to look at my background. I'm told I'm never going to be a doctor. No, I'm going to step in and become a doctor. I remember, the animosity I faced opening a pharmacy was unbelievable. But I opened a pharmacy. It's all about necessity and about doing the right thing. And I will always do the right thing. If to my detriment, I'll do the right thing. So I think you have to. I think we as clinicians, as healthcare providers, as healthcare givers, as somebody who removes suffering, I think we need to be given this advice. And it's completely it's a natural step for me. I've gone natural step from pharmacy into medicine. Now it's a natural step for me to move in this direction. And health and wellness is it. And no, it's not a trend. This isn't a trend. This is life-giving, life-saving advice needs to be given.
Yeah. So are you seeing a change in what patients are wanting and expecting in your work at the moment, especially perhaps women going through maybe hormone transitions?
Absolutely. Women want to know more. There's so much information out there. They just want somebody to remove the noise, have a look at some of the evidence-based stuff that's out there, but also bring it into a sustainable, how could you say, a sustainable and something that made sense. Taking very difficult concepts, making sense of them, putting them together for people and saying this is going to help you. It almost like a bespoke advice. Somebody's going to come in, look, a CEO of a company, and I don't know, a woman at home with 3 kids is going to need different advice. And I think it's just looking at people, the whole person. And this is, I suppose, where the whole holistic medicine thing comes in. Looking at the whole person, the way they live their life, everything they do, from how they sleep, eat, everything, how they handle stress, and giving them advice to help them get back onto an even keel.
And do you think there's anything that's still misunderstood about holistic or integrative approaches, such as what you do?
I think gone are the days where we were actually seen as quacks, where we ended up going, talking about, I don't know, sticking goose fat on your chest and stuff like that. I think that's getting better. I think the narrative is getting better because a lot more people are wanting this advice. But I still think we've got a long way to go. And I think more and more clinicians need to be adopting this. And I know that's sort of happening. When I say sort of happening, is the first thing I did when I was having palpitations and feeling unwell and not right is I went to see my own GP. His advice was, here's some estradiol, you should be okay soon. And then I went back a year later and he said, oh, you didn't come in for repeat prescriptions, but you're looking really well. I said, yes. I said, this is the advice I took. And he said, well, where did you learn this? And he wants to learn it and he wants to give that advice. So, I applaud the fact that he came out with it, but he could have given me that, if he'd have known, he could have given me that advice straight off, right from the start. Before things went wrong, before I had to go and look for it myself.
So there's obviously a gap between what people are searching for and what conventional medicine is offering. And what is in that gap? What is in that gap, do you think?
I think what it is that conventional medicine, it's that crisis point, isn't it? It's the bit where we're too, the pathology has gone too far for us to fix it. So we need that medicine, we need external advice, we need that professional to help us. And then what I think people like you and I offer is that bridge before you get there. It's just that noise in the middle before we get there. So you've got the well person, you've got that journey before they become unwell, and you've got the doctor. And I think we're that journey. And I think that's where we give people sustainable habits and advice that they can literally educate their whole family with. And you have that. That's where we are. That's where I think we fall. But I do believe that we need that medical training at the end to recognize when what we're doing isn't going to help them, that they actually need pharmacological intervention as well. So, yeah, that's the bit where I think I belong.
Thank you. So now thinking about Rosmedics, I mean, what's going well for you right now? It's obviously a business, it's a clinic. What are the things that you're sort of most proud of? What's going well for you?
Well, what I'm really proud about is that we've got the Will program online now, and we've been offered this wonderful building, not offered, we looked for it, wonderful building just off Cathedral Road in Cardiff, which will have, again, evidence-based wellness treatments. So we've got some intravenous infusions that we'll be doing. We've got NAD, we've got hyperbaric, and some infrared, basically a sort of wellness feel-good place that you can come. And of course, the bit that I love, which is my health optimization program. So that person who has been to the doctor doesn't quite feel they got what they wanted for, doesn't particularly want to go down the medicalized route, the pharmacological route, and is coming in saying, look, I know something's wrong with me, but I don't know what's wrong with me. And the doctor says, I'm absolutely fine, and I want you to help me. And then my health optimization kicks in then, and it's looking at the person, their lifestyle, their habits, looking at their blood panels, and helping them to build a thriving life. And I hope Rosmedics and Will, I don't hope, I know Rosmedics and Will help that along.
Superb. And the other side of the coin, what are the challenges in doing the work that you do, and is there anything you've had to recently overcome, particularly perhaps as you're sort of moving into a new clinic? What are some of the kind of things that you have to face?
Well, as a medical doctor, I have to be HIW registered, even if I'm just giving advice, because they're coming to me because it's a doctor. So, funnily enough, there's more regulation that a doctor faces than maybe Joe Bloggs down the road in a little room giving advice on biohacking, for example, which we know in some instances can be very, very dangerous for some people. So I've got a lot of regulation and bureaucracy that I've got to overcome. The other thing is so that I've got to keep up with my, as doctors are GMC regulated and registered. We have to, I have to have yearly appraisals, which means I'm still working at the hospital. So that takes away the time I want to give, because I have to be validated. I have to be seen as a GMC registered doctor to have that validity to work anyway. So that's where my sort of time is not best used, but also it is best used. It's an odd thing to say, but I have to do that to be able to do what I love. Yeah. So yeah, they're the difficulties. And of course, you're not just running what you love. I'm not just running what I love. It's also a business. So I've got people that are reliant on me. So you've got the usual stresses and strains of a business, and just trying to get people to businesses, for example. I would love for them to take up Will, because they would have an absolutely amazing workforce. They'll be resilient. There'll be absences will go down. And they've given something to their work colleagues that would really help their business. I want them to come and see us and recognize us. You know, it's that recognition, but it's getting them to believe it and getting them to understand it and know that it's the right way.
If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing in how your practice runs, or perhaps the wider world of lifestyle medicine, what would it be?
The wider world of lifestyle medicine, I would love for there to be some type of module that medical students or doctors, actually qualified doctors, could have, that they'd be able to implement the framework that I've come up with, that they could do that before they see a patient. That framework, I want them to use that framework. That would make me really, really happy. Then I know I've done something meaningful to the world of medicine.
That'd be wonderful to get in. I mean, the trouble is, I know the medical curricula are so overloaded, and the thing anybody wants to get in is always squeezing something in to squeeze something out, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But do you know that I've spoken to, so I'll be working with a pilot study with a school, a pilot study with a law firm, and I'm more than happy to go in and do a pilot study with the hospital, to literally sit down with some of the newly qualified doctors and say, before you go looking at your patient, maybe look at these parts, and give them a summary of what they could be doing with their patients. I mean, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm doing it already with some people, but I would love to do that with my old university. I think that's the wand. Give me my old university and let me do that.
Thank you. Obviously, you're on the brink of a new clinic, but if you had 100 new clients next week, what would happen? Would anything break? And hopefully not you or any of your colleagues.
No, we're ready for it.
You're ready for it. Bring it on.
Absolutely ready for it. Bring it on. Yeah. It's a passion. It's not work. This is a complete and utter passion. And when you live your passion, it doesn't break.
Right, so thinking about the next year or so, what would you love to do with the Will program or Rosmedics over the next year or so? Where are you going in the future?
I would love for the Will program to be adopted within schools by the headmasters, mistresses for their teachers. Same with businesses. But at the same time, I'd probably want to develop will for children, for younger population, so that they can have maybe a once monthly program talking about a principle, what sleep does, what blue light does, the types of hydration, movement, getting all that with children really quite young, so that they can start going home and saying, Mum, I was told this today. Mum, I was told that today, because they listen in school. And it's just helping our younger generation, our 7-year-olds upwards, to actually bring a bit of sensibility back into the home.
With that, Ros, I'd like to thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. I think so many listeners are going to resonate with your honesty and your courage in stepping out of the system and building something which truly supports healing. I think your journey has been truly inspiring, and so is your mission, and I wish you all the very best with it. But thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And you made me actually even more passionate about what I'm going to do. So thank you so much for that.